We need to hold on. We need to hang in there to get through this third wave.
More anxious days ahead as Canada reaches new COVID-19 milestones.
We're tired of outside companies coming in, hiring whoever they want, and walking off our reserve with millions of dollars.
Blood Tribe contractors and truckers are protesting and say they're being passed over for local jobs. And 5 shootings in a matter of days on an Alberta First Nation. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in central Alberta, where 4 people were shot early Monday morning on the Alberta First Nation. All 4 are in the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. RCMP say 2 men have been taken into custody. They also say it's too soon to tell if this incident is related to a confrontation that occurred on Saturday between an RCMP officer and a 24-year-old Ochais resident that resulted in the death of the community member. A federal court judge has just awarded a BC fish farming company an injunction against the federal government's decision to remove all fish farms from the Discovery Islands. The licenses for Maui Canada and 3 other fish farming companies expired in December 2020. That triggered consultations with 7 First Nations around the Discovery Islands. They unanimously said to remove the farms. The federal government gave the companies until June of 2022 to remove all the farmed fish. Alexandra Morton, a scientist who has warned that fish farms contaminate wild salmon, says this means the ball is back in the federal government's court.
So the minister said, okay, to the companies, you can finish growing the fish that are in those farms, but you can't put any more in. And so Maui has now gone to court to fight the prohibition to restock, and they won. But they didn't really win anything. The minister has to make the decision again. And the minister's not allowed to consider the consultation with the 7 nations of the Discovery Islands.
Contractors on the Blood Reserve in southern Alberta say outside sources are taking away their jobs. They spent the long weekend protesting to keep those jobs within the community. Tamara Pimentel has that story.
This is just a small portion of equipment owned by Blood Tribe contractors and truckers, and rather than being used for work, they're parked here in the community to make a statement.
We're tired of outside companies coming in, hiring whoever they want, and walking off our reserve with millions of dollars, where we can keep the money on the reserve, we can hire our own, and we're just as qualified as anybody else.
Beth Day Chief, spokesperson for the Blood Tribe contractors and truckers, says outside company Talbera Technologies has been given Blood Tribe contracts, leaving local business owners without work.
A lot of our contractors have over 30 years experience, and we have the equipment to do the work, so why is he outsourcing the work?
Contractors like Chester Wells.
Out of the year, it probably runs 3 months out of the year. This guy, I have 2 more.
He says members want to see more transparency and accountability when deciding who gets work.
You know, we've got the equipment to do it. We've got all the resources here to do it. We've got the power force.
Eugene Fox is a Blood Tribe trucker and farmer. He says this doesn't only affect small business owners, but the families of its employees and the future of the community.
So that we have a future for our kids. They want to do what we're doing. And they're very talented. They want to farm, they want to ranch, want to run heavy equipment. They want to run their own gravel trucks. But when the jobs are gone, what do? Go to welfare? Sit on the streets? It shouldn't be happening. There's lots of money here going out the door.
APTN has reached out to Talbera. They say they aren't commenting at this time, and we have been unable to reach Blood Tribe Chief and Council. Day Chief says the group will be submitting a petition to Blood Tribe leadership.
Enough's enough. We want our work back. We're qualified, and they should be using the contractors from the reserve.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News on the Blood Reserve.
Further north now, and with the Yukon territorial election just around the corner, a candidates forum was held recently to discuss how their parties will address First Nation concerns. Here's APTN Sarah Connors with an inside look at the issues some First Nations leaders want the next Yukon government to address.
Join me in extending a warm welcome to...
This is the All Candidates Forum on Yukon First Nations issues. It was held in Whitehorse as a way for First Nation voters to learn more about the territory's 3 running parties' platforms.
Here are the rules, the ground rules for the questions.
Leaders answered questions on issues like COVID, housing, and child welfare, and how they would support First Nations governments. Liberal Premier Sandy Silver says his party's track record since being elected in 2016 speaks for itself, like rolling out the country's first vaccine plan and the first missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls strategy.
We worked with collaboration with the First Nations governments to come to the table with respect and understanding. That is what we have done.
NDP leader Kate White says her party has bold plans for the future, like covering basic dental work, setting housing caps, and an aggressive climate policy.
We're committed to wetland policy, we're committed to land use plans, we're committed to species at risk legislation.
Yukon Party leader Curry Dixon says if elected, his party will get rid of Yukon Energy's reliance on rented diesel generators and get the economy back on track. He adds it will also improve education for First Nation students, like creating an Indigenous academy.
We know that First Nations student outcomes have not been where they need to be, and significant change is needed.
Party leaders were also able to respond directly to questions from First Nations leaders, like Champagne and Ajiac First Nation Chief Steve Smith, who wants the new leadership to support preserving languages.
Now, I want to hear your party's commitment to First Nation languages and the revitalization of First Nation languages in the Yukon Territory. Oh, geez.
All 3 leaders agreed an early immersion program is needed. The Yukon territorial election will take place on April 12th. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
We'd like to hear what you think about this or any other story you see here. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. To the pandemic now, and some dire news coming out of Ottawa today. Canada has surpassed 1 million COVID-19 infections with over 23,000 deaths. And more cases continue to flood intensive care units across the country. It was also announced that 10 million vaccine doses have now been delivered to provinces and territories. However, officials say there are indications vaccines may be less effective against the COVID-19 variants. They say everyone is tired, but the pandemic is not going away easily.
We need to hold on. We need to hang in there to get through this 3rd wave by holding tight and looking out for each other and flattening this curve, and everything we can do as a federal government, everything we can help the provinces do is going to help us get through this with one last push.
Meanwhile, another strain of the COVID-19 virus has turned up in Japan as the country gets ready to host the Summer Olympics. The Prime Minister there has vowed to expand emergency measures to contain this new wave after a growing number of cases have been identified in Tokyo.
That mutation appears to make the virus, make vaccines less effective, slightly less effective. We don't have really sort of conclusive data as far as I can see yet, but in lab tests, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines were slightly less effective. Now, put that in context. Vaccines are still very effective at keeping you out of hospital, but maybe slightly less effective with these variants at preventing you contracting the illness.
Health experts are also concerned about the B.1.1.7 variant, which has seen a resurgence in the Osaka area. It'll be interesting to see if the games go ahead. Time for a quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Welcome back. Now to a story reported on Nouvelle Nationale earlier this week about a group home in Quebec's Côte-Nord region. It is being investigated for neglect, and many of its residents are Innu. Here's the story by Sylvia Ambrose, translated and voiced by Lindsay Richardson.
It was in fall 2020 that this spontaneous protest against child apprehension came to life in Wahatmak-Maniutinam. For years, the Innu population there experienced having their children taken away by youth protection workers, who placed them in homes hundreds of kilometers away, in communities like Blanc-Sablon or Bécomo, where this institution is now being investigated due to overrepresentation of Innu youth and quality of life concerns. According to media reports, their education and cultural needs are being neglected. This woman's granddaughter was placed at the institution called the Richelieu Pavilion, and for confidentiality reasons, APTN has chosen to conceal her identity.
Dans une école de Bahaoudish que de Marianne, ça peine que j'ai hâte na manadam na madadona tâche que de mani bana de 13 ans à 16 ans na chupano. Peut-être dans l'école mais comment que dans des quatre mais comment 13 ans je pense 15 ans na de peut-être ça na l'école.
By some reports, almost 80% of the pavilion's residents are First Nations, but the Regional Health Authority overseeing the Richelieu Pavilion says these reports are false. By their account, Innu youth make up less than half of the center's population, but they did not provide exact numbers. Marius Picard, a retired social worker from Wahatmak-Maniutinam, feels systemic racism contributes to the continued apprehension of Innu children. He's not surprised by the human rights investigation, but is concerned by the issue of language.
Le problème était le même dans le temps que j'étais là, soit au niveau de la langue. Les jeunes disaient que il n'y avait pas le droit de parler entre eux autres en Innu.
It's something this woman says she witnessed firsthand while visiting her granddaughter. She says she was ordered to not cry and not speak Innu during subsequent visits. Picard proposes a solution, hire Indigenous, and stressed that candidates be fluent in Innu. But he says it's not an immediate or guaranteed solution.
Mais là, la liste d'attente, ça sauterait. Mais là, ils ont dit non, on ne peut pas parce que le syndicat va nous sauter dessus, le syndicat ne voudra pas. C'est là que je me suis dit, est-ce que vraiment ils veulent trouver des solutions? Ou bien donc, ils font un comité rien que pour faire un comité.
The granddaughter who spent so many years at the Richelieu Pavilion was not available to interview about her experience, but she gave her grandmother permission to share a poem she wrote. Quote, "They say they don't want to assimilate us, that they've changed, but in truth, I'm living the same thing my elders did. I've had enough." In a statement, the Regional Health Authority stressed the clientele of the Pavillon Richelieu are not being neglected as other media have reported, but Quebec's Human Rights Commission is looking into it. At this time, it's unclear how long the investigation will last. A story by Sylvie Ambroise, APTN National News, Montreal.
What a story. Now to an update about a story APTN first brought you in September 2020 involving a First Nation in the Northwest Territories under scrutiny for postponing elections. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs explains the federal court decision and what's next for the community.
Floyd Bertrand wants to share some good news. This month, a federal court judge ruled in his favor and determined the Atcho-Dene-Co First Nation Chief and Council wrongfully extended their term in office.
It just goes to show, how important band members' voices are. And we wanted an election, but the Chief and Council took it upon a regulation that really didn't apply to us and used it for their extension.
Most of the 550 members live in Fort Liard, Northwest Territories, where Atcho-Dene-Co government offices are. APTN visited in September. Letters here say an election has been postponed until November. Back then, community members said Chief and Council were using Indian Act COVID-19 regulations to postpone their election, something the regulations allowed.
Well, there was never an election code that was ratified in the community.
Only issue, Atcho-Dene-Co isn't governed by the Indian Act.
And the most important thing was the First Nation members, like the band members, were never consulted or even were consulted or even asked about, we'd like to postpone the election for another 6 months, if so another year, due to COVID.
The federal court agreed with that, and that decision might allow other bands to hold an election, pandemic or no pandemic. The case received support from the nonprofit group Band Members Alliance and Advocacy Association of Canada, who filed for intervenor status.
Because there are a number of other similar cases across Canada where Chief and Council have unilaterally extended their term in office, relying on these regulations, we said that the implications are far-reaching, and the court agreed with us.
APTN reached out to Chief and Council but did not receive any comment by airtime. The First Nation will host an election April 26th to decide a new Chief and Council for a 3-year term. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
A new episode of Face to Face airs tonight right after the news. We've got a preview for you after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Brad shared this shot of the creatures he found on the shores in Belcara Regional Park, British Columbia. Cool shot. If you want the chance to be featured as our photo of the day, you can email your photos to share at aptn.ca and tune in each day, Monday to Friday, to watch our newscast. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, +5 with showers for St. John's and Charlottetown. -4 in Inukjuak, +3 with rain in Kuujjuaq. 16 for Montreal, Chibougamau, and Val-d'Or. +17 for Sault Ste. Marie, same in North Bay but with rain. 9 with showers in Thunder Bay, sun's out, and 9 in Sioux Lookout. +7 for Thompson, 11 in God's Lake. 16 in Winnipeg, 18 for Dauphin and Brandon. 19 and sunny for Estevan, Regina, and Saskatoon. 16 and sunny in Meadow Lake, 13 with showers for La Ronge. Snow in parts of northern Alberta, +6 in Fort Chip, +4 in Peace River. 19 in Medicine Hat, showers in 13 for Edmonton. Rain in Vancouver with a high of 9, 10 with showers for Victoria. -1 with snow in Dease Lake, +5 and flurries for Prince George. -13 in Old Crow, 7 below with snow for Whitehorse. Snow and -5 in Yellowknife, flurries and 14 below for Norman Wells. -20 in Sax Harbor, 16 below with snow in Colville Lake. -6 with snow in Chesterfield, 22 below in Cambridge Bay. -17 with snow in Resolute, 8 below with snow in Igloolik. An Indigenous-led group of volunteers is hoping to create a safer community, one step at a time. CTV's Janella Hamilton joined the OPG Patrol Group, making a difference in Saskatoon's core neighborhoods.
Rashea Sagan says being a part of Saskatoon's Okitsitawak Patrol Group has been a humbling experience.
We hear a lot about like homelessness and, just drug struggles, alcohol problems.
The Indigenous-led group was created in 2018, its name a Cree term for protector. The group is dedicated to making a difference in Saskatoon's core communities, spending much of their time patrolling schools and playgrounds, handing out donations, and connecting the city's most vulnerable with essential services.
It's hard to hear about sometimes, the stories that people come forward and tell us, especially being out on the streets and seeing it actually happen. It makes me feel like I want to do more, and I feel like that's what OPG is about.
The team walks communities on foot in groups of 3 with the goal of improving safety. As the warm weather arrives, picking up used needles becomes a major focus. Alleys in the Pleasant Hill neighborhood are one of the places the patrol group cleans up used needles. According to the Saskatoon Fire Department, last year crews received more than 1,500 calls for needle pickups citywide, retrieving more than 10,000 needles. Storm Knight grew up in Pleasant Hill and says it can sometimes be intense.
You gotta be able to understand that when they're screaming and yelling at you, it's not you, it's just what they're going through. And the most thing they need to know is that you're not against them, that you're trying to help them.
During the pandemic, the group shifted their focus to ensuring the homeless have a safe place to sleep, but they're always looking for donations and volunteers to help cover more ground. Janella Hamilton, CTV News, Saskatoon.
Great work you're doing there. A growing collective of Métis people in Manitoba are upset with some decisions being made in their name by the Manitoba Métis Federation. They call themselves Red River Echoes, and their open letters to the MMF leadership elicited an angry response from President David Chartrand. 2 members of that collective are our guests tonight on Face to Face.
What we want is a return to a more traditional Métis style of governance, as opposed to running our government like a corporation, and somewhat at this point, after a quarter of a century, like an oligarch. So, telling us to go to hell, getting angry at us, I'm not insulted. We're not insulted by that. We don't feel bad.
And that episode of Face to Face is less than 2 minutes away. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And be sure to tune in here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's when Melissa Ridgen will put the child welfare system in focus. That's live at 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.